Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Limerick Junior Soccer Focus with myself, Adrian Finnin, and our guest, Aidan Ryan. Aidan, we've plenty to get through this evening, it's fair to say, between transfers, transfer windows, recaps on games, previews of games. There's been so much happened since we last talked, even. It's incredible how quickly the season is moving. But to start on what is a very topical issue from what I've seen from our report on it yesterday, that Jack Ara is moving to Fairview. Now, there's been no confirmation, Aidan, from either club through social media, but through Sean Russell had said that Jack Ara had departed regional, so it's almost certain he's gone to Fairview now. I suppose, first of all, what do you think he'll bring to Fairview, and were you surprised by the timing of the move?
Very surprised by the timing of the move. Okay, I mean he was with regional last season and then made his move obviously to Treaty. That didn't work out for him, and having done so well at regional previously, the logical move back was to move back to them. Now to move to Fairview after, I don't know, I see only back since the start of the season.
Yeah.
Pretty surprising. Nothing should surprise us in football anymore, but pretty surprising that he has obviously opted to move to Fairview. I suppose from his point of view, maybe a great move for him in that he's joining the club that will be looking to win the league, looking to progress in the Munster Junior Cup and the FAI Junior Cup. I would assume regional would have the same ambitions, that they'll be trying to do as well as they can in the league, certainly make the top six and take it from there, and also looking to make runs in the FAI and the Munster Junior Cup. He's moving to a club that have a very strong squad in the position he plays in, certainly in that department, with Conor Ellis, Coughlin and Darragh Rainsford. So he'll be going up there obviously to provide competition there. Trying to make the breakthrough there will be pretty difficult, but he obviously feels he has the ability to upset the apple cart with those three lads. And listen, Paul Danner will be delighted getting another quality player into the squad. He's young enough, but he has a reasonable amount of experience. He's coming back from his spell at Treaty, where he would have learned quite a bit under the management team there. Fitness levels, as I've previously said, with him joining regional would be, you would think, very high. So he won't be playing any sort of catch up in that respect. Great signing for Fairview. What happened to regional? Hard to know. I watched the game against Coona recently, between regional and Coona, out in Coona, and he started on the bench. He came on. Thought he did reasonably well when he came on. But Owen Duff seemed to be the main man up front that night. So obviously, he might have had a falling out. Who knows? Or it's hard to judge. You never say never in football, Adrian. So overall, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised at it, should I?
I suppose we definitely shouldn't. But I suppose there's going to be plenty of speculation as to what happened, because he does, as you said, it's a great sign for Fairview because he comes back with a bit of pedigree from his experience now in the League of Ireland level, even though it was only a 6-month period. But training all the time with higher standard of player. Obviously, before he left as well, Aidan, he was top scorer. So for that, to have that as what we perceive will be a second striker to Conor Ellis, to give him competition. I know Jack might have different opinions on that, but he looks like he'll be a second striker. It is a very shrewd signing. I suppose gives credit to the notion from yourself that they weren't finished with signing players either, but we won't go there. We won't give you too much credit, but yes, it doesn't seem like Fairview are finished yet, that's for sure. I suppose looking at it from Jack's point of view, Aidan, it's, as you said, you'd probably expect regional to be, if they're not in the top six, rightly challenging for it. Everyone thought when he was going back to regional he was going to be the main man. In some ways, it kind of looked like Sean Russell had other ideas, because as you said, he didn't play him again in the Coona game. He was kind of on the periphery against Fairview as well, with Owen Duff being at centre stage. So, I wonder, was there just a clash of personalities on his arrival back?
It's quite possible. And to be fair to Owen Duff, I watched the game against Coona, as I said, and I thought he did really well. Very good feet. He's small centre of gravity, but decent in the air, made good channel runs, can play in front and can play in behind, and can score goals. And if he's in there from the start and he's doing well, and listen, it can be hard for a manager sometimes to change things if the guy in that position, depending on the formation that the manager is playing, if that guy's doing well, then how are you going to leave him out? He's not giving you an excuse to leave him out. And some guys have to wait their turn. Jack is a prolific player in his own right. He might feel he should be in the team, and he might be looking at the Fairview move as a move to prove that he should be there, and he'll be fighting for his place obviously above in Fairview, and we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
Yeah, certainly it will be interesting to see, and we will come on to Fairview Rangers soon. Just before we move off the transfers and maybe the whole scenario about transfer windows, I do know that from speaking to a few managers from both lower divisions and higher divisions, that it's a topical issue in terms of how long the transfer window is in the Limerick District League. You know, you've got until the end of September, Aidan, and obviously, you know, from the end of May, the season finishes. So realistically, from the end of May until the very end of September, you can move. The problem with that, there isn't necessarily a problem with the length of time, Aidan. It's probably because you could have 9 or 10 league matches played by that stage, including maybe a couple of cup ties. Managers then feel like it's just a player's market in terms of the minute things go bad, you know, players are jumping ship and they're given maybe too much time. What's your own opinion on that? Do you think it should be shortened?
I do actually. It is a nightmare for managers and coaches. I'm not in favour of it. I'm also not in favour with the extended December, January window either. I actually feel, and it's my own opinion, that there should be no transfer window up to September. And even if there was to be one, they should cut it down to a week and tighten it up. That might sound a bit controversial now, but that's how I feel on it. I'd actually have none at all. And I'd look at maybe bringing in one for December. But even at that, I'd cut it tight to a couple of weeks, Adrian. It only takes 48 hours, Adrian, to transfer a fella now.
Yeah.
Years ago, back in the day when I was relevant as a player, it took a week or 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, before you could get a player properly transferred. Now it's 48 hours. So there's no need for the length of time that is there at the minute. And I think players actually need to be more responsible now in the off-season and maybe in pre-season. You've plenty of time to think about where you should be if you're training with a club. If they've, 18, 20, 24 players training, you will know where you stand close enough to the time allocated before the actual kickoff, where you stand with that. Where do you feel you'll fit in there or not, or where do you get a fair crack at the whip? As fellas would always say to a manager and coach, am I going to get a fair crack at the whip? But this thing of it going on till the end of September, I think it's absolutely ludicrous, to be honest with you. And it upsets clubs, it upsets managers, it upsets coaches, and ultimately it upsets the rhythm of a team and a squad. Don't get me wrong, I don't blame managers or coaches for signing. I've said that previously, for signing as many players as they want. That's up to them. But players should actually take more responsibility about the thing. Have a look at the overall picture. See where they fit in. Am I going to be getting enough game time here? Have I a chance of getting into the squad? And then when you get into the squad, have I a chance of making the 11? Too many players are just signing the form willy-nilly and then crying wolf as soon as things aren't looking too good for them. I just get rid of it myself. If my arm was twisted, maybe look at maybe a week at the end of September. But even at that, I wouldn't have it. I'd look to December and look at a 2-week window in December.
Yeah, and even just for registering players, Aidan, it seems to be a bit long-winded, because you did speak about players taking more responsibility. I mean, I was astonished, being a player myself, obviously you'd hear a bit more on the ground, but I was astonished myself to see the amount of players, you know, that were training with like several clubs, half a dozen clubs. I know people will say it's a free country, and I don't want to sound pedantic and start talking about, you know, junior football as if we should be holding it to the same pedestal as like League of Ireland, but it just seems incredible like that. For, you know, very frustrating for clubs when you're trying to tie down a squad and you've got guys that are playing friendlies and training with everyone.
Well, you're dead right, and the other thing is that you have to protect the team and the squad. You have to protect our league as well. And we've already seen the scenario where we have lost a team from our Premier League because they didn't have enough players to fulfil fixtures.
And I do believe Granville are going as well soon, Ed, and just add to that, I think Granville Rangers will be going soon without total confirmation on that.
That is very, very sad news now to hear that. Very disappointing news for a team. I think they won the league last year, Adrian.
Yeah.
Very disappointing news. And maybe goes back to a little snippet we had a conversation in the last chat about capping the squad numbers at maybe 22 players or something like that, which is something I'd be in favour of. I think it's a totally ludicrous situation, and it needs to be tightened up, and it needs to be looked at, and maybe thrown out to the clubs for maybe a discussion at some future point.
Yeah, I certainly do agree that probably needs to be the case in the future. I suppose to move on to on-field matters now, Aidan, we've plenty to discuss, but we preview tomorrow night's clash as we record this on the Wednesday between Fairview Rangers and Ballinanty. It takes place in Limerick Institute of Technology, the first game that Ballinanty will be playing on the grass pitch, actually, since it's had work done to it. A huge clash, Aidan, it's fair to say, and it always has lived up to expectations in most cases. I suppose Ballinanty will be looking at it saying there's a bit of pressure on us here. They're now 7 points already behind Fairview Rangers, and because Fairview have won all of their games so far, we see that Ballinanty have slipped up last weekend against Nina. Obviously, they've lost to Pike as well on the way and drew at Crew Park. So they will be thinking that almost already this could be last chance saloon, because you don't want Fairview Rangers going 10 points clear you at this early stage. Even if you do have to play the likes of Pike and Fairview twice, it will mean you have to beat them all the time. So I suppose there is more pressure on Ballinanty than Fairview going into this one.
Absolutely, Adrian. Ballinanty have to get something out of this match. I've always felt as a general rule, Adrian, that if you want to win a league, you can't lose more than 4 games. I think if you lose more than 4 games, you're in chance saloon after that. And they've lost. They have lost the game. They've drawn a couple. They lost that game to also arch rivals Pike. If they lose the 3 points tomorrow night to Fairview, you're looking at being 10 points behind before the split, and that's before another 3 or 4 games to come, when morale might be at his best if they lose the game tomorrow night. I feel myself to have to get something out of the game, even if it means taking a point. It could be a very important point. As I said to you before, every point is precious in this league. They'll be a little bit disappointed the fact that they went or dropped what they would consider dropped 2 points against Nina in their last outing. I would also say, on the other counter that, by saying, listen, it was probably a point gain because we were 1-0 down, I think, going into the last seconds. And by all accounts, the goal was rather lucky. It was a bit of a mishit cross by, I think it was Eddie Burns, and it ended up in the net. So they might look at that as maybe a point gain, given where they were going into the last few minutes. They're meeting a Fairview team that is banging form. We spoke about the 3 boys up front in terms of scoring goals. That seems to be happening at the moment. So they have a huge task in their hands tomorrow night. Looking at the Balla team that played Nina in their last game, I didn't see Adam Costello there. And he, so far as I know, he's carrying an injury, and he could be a doubt for tomorrow night. He'd be a big loss for them at the back, which means they might have to shuffle bodies across like they did against Nina, maybe play Gary Hughes at centre half. So they'll have to be on their game, because the Fairview first 11 has been reasonably consistent since the start of the season. In fairness to Paul, he's had a level of consistency about it. And I kind of like that. I know that some teams can be in trouble in terms of work commitments. Fellas, this going away on holidays job, obviously I've a bare bug with mine at this stage of the season. But you've had the front 3 consistently playing, Shane Duggan and Stephen Bradley in the midfield consistently there, and the back 4 consistently there, and Aaron Savage in goal. That's a great template to have consistently over the first 5, 6, 7 games. Although the league is a little bit distorted, Adrian, given that all the clubs have been given points as a result of the prospect debacle. So Fairview looking really good. Paul Daniel will be delighted the way it's shaping up. Calling it, I would have to say that if Balla get out maybe a full side, and given the spirit and commitment they do have, they might scrap a draw out of it, but you'd have to be looking at Fairview for 3 points, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it certainly does look to be the case. I was smirking when I was trying to do notes for this podcast, Aidan, at the fact that since we called out Fairview for not scoring as many as we thought they would. They scored 16 goals in 3 games, so it shows you what we know, I suppose. But yeah, I wonder did they use that as motivation? Probably not, I'd imagine. I think we're probably making ourselves feel too important there. But yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting. It'll be a spicy game as well, as it always is, Aidan. We know that both Paul Danaher, in fairness, and Dave Dunphy are very well, I was going to use the word hot-headed, but that's very unpolitical of me. I mean that they're very good in terms of motivating their squad. That was what I actually meant. But they'll have their teams rightly riled up for it. Not that they'll need any more motivation, it's fair to say. But you'll also have a few cross, divides there. You'll have Jake Dillon and Conor Ellis going back to Ballinanty, playing against them. You'll have the 2 Fitzgerald brothers, James and Keane Fitzgerald, playing against Fairview. So there'll be that extra bit of spice as well.
Oh yeah, there'll be plenty happening off the pitch as well as on. But in fairness to the 2 managers, they're very passionate. I mean, Adrian, Paul Danaher and David Dunphy were very passionate players, gave 110% for each club, for the clubs they played with, both at League of Ireland level and at junior level. So they will have their teams well motivated for the game. It'll be interesting tactically to see what they do. Obviously, Fairview will be playing a 4-3-3. I haven't seen them, but obviously you have, and the 4-3-3 all season. Bala have varied a little bit, shifting players around the place. So
that was one thing I was going to ask you. They have generally in Dave Dunphy's time favoured a 3-5-2, but as you said, it has been a bit more mixed. Do you think that would be the right way to go about it against Fairview?
I think he'll play a 4 at the back, going against Fairview, and depending what bodies are available. He might even go tighter on that. He might play 2 in front of that 4, and go 4-2, maybe a 4-2-3-1, something similar to that. Hard to judge. Again, it depends on what he has available. It certainly looks like Fairview aren't going to change anything anyway, because, as I said, he's had that consistency, Paul Danaher, and he's been playing a 4-3-3. It certainly has been working well. I'm not, as I said before, not overly a great favourite of a 4-3-3, but it depends how, I suppose, tactically he plays that 4-4-3-3 and how he uses his full backs especially. But they have been in top form. Let's face it, they're top of the league, scored a lot of goals, they're unbeaten. I say morale must be very high there.
And I suppose one thing as well, Paul did mention that to me after the regional game that he was really pleased with. But one thing that has went slightly under the radar because of the amount of goals they're scoring is they're actually not conceding at all. Coon are the only team to have scored against them, even with a new back 4. Aidan, to be fair, so I know they'll come up against a bigger test. I suppose you have, younger players like Scott Corwin and Jason Cross, but Scott has played in a lot of bigger games, as Paul did allude to as well. But I suppose it's a night there where you're looking for, obviously, Jake Dillon, as I said, will need no more motivation. But if Wayne Colbert plays, you need him to be in the right form and have a right positive effect on that back line on the night.
You do. You will need your leaders on the pitch, and there's load of leaders on the Fairview side. I still feel, Adrian, that Fairview team haven't really been tested yet, and I think there are going to be tests in this league in the next few weeks. Obviously, you'll have a break with a couple of cup games, but I also feel, and I've said this to you already, I think they'll be in the market for another couple of players. I feel they need another defender, maybe 2, or maybe a defender and maybe another midfielder. Because you have players in that midfield who are quite capable of slotting in at the back. Stephen Bradley, when I was at Jamesborough, obviously played a lot of his football at centre back and has no problem slotting in there. AJ Maloney can play, or AJ O'Connor can obviously play in midfield or again in the back. John Milan can play in midfield or the back. So he's a few options there, but I feel that Paul will strengthen that possibly before the end of this lovely transfer window that lasts till the end of September.
Yeah, I think that some of the Fairview clubmen were pretty quiet when I was asking them the question directly about it, which makes me think that there is more business on the way for their club. But I suppose just to move on to the last night's fixtures, there was 2 fixtures last night. And firstly, Pike Rovers managed to get a 1-0 victory over Coona, which we'll come to soon. But Regional United had a 6-2 victory over Charleville. That makes it 3 wins in 5 days for Regional. On paper, they probably would have been expecting it, but it's no easy feat to go and do that, and play the majority of the same players in every game. It's fair to say. I spoke to Sean Russell after the game on Sunday that I was at between Regional and Jamesborough. He was obviously happy with the victory. He made it clear that it's going to be ambition to make the top 6. But a lot of people thought with a new manager coming in, a young manager who likes to put on his own stamp on it. We spoke about it already, maybe with Jack Ara not starting the Coona game. But, from speaking to Sean, he stressed the importance of consulting with the senior players and keeping the senior players on board, the likes of your Kieran O'Connell's and Andrew Cowpers and the likes, and he felt that he needed to keep that core there. I think that was the right way to go about it.
Absolutely, and it's so important, and you need that seniority in the dressing room. He did bring a few younger lads with him. He brought a couple from Ashling B, didn't he? And he signed two as well. He signed obviously Owen Duff as well from Fairview, and look, he's obviously changed. I think he's changed the formation a bit. He probably changed the style of football a little bit. He's tweaked with things here and there, and he's putting his own stamp in it. And you got to admire what he's doing so far. I obviously questioned in a couple of podcasts, the fact that he has managed at Premier A level, and there is a difference between managing at Premier A level and managing at Premier level. It is a step up, no matter what anyone thinks about it. But he has, I think has 6 wins, maybe 6-7 wins now, 1 defeat. Now the 1 defeat is one to look at as well, because they took a bit of a tonking at Fairview. So when you're playing those, I suppose we'll call them assumed top four teams, you'll be measured as well. Outside of playing Kuna and beating them 5-0 or 5-1 and going to Charleville and winning 6-2, and you can't take anything away from that. But you'll also be measured by what you do against the teams that are in the top 4, and how you prepare for those games and how you manage them. Obviously, the game against Fairview didn't manage it quite well, given the scoreline, and given what you told me, Fairview weren't flattered at the scoreline by the end of the match. So there's still a bit of work there to be done, but they're looking very good for the top 6, and it's great to see that Sean has the ambition of getting the club into the top 6. With 3 or 4 games to go now, because a lot of teams now, Adrian, have played 7 or 8 games already, given that they've got the points from the prospect situation. It looks like Region will get there. We'll see how they do when they're in that top 6.
Yeah, certainly it will. It'll certainly be interesting. I also mentioned that game between Kuna and Pike. We've always mentioned about Pike, and they never seem to blitz a team or never do anything fancy, but they always seem to get over the line. That was particularly the situation here. I know that Kuna were unhappy actually with the decision for the goal to stand, because they felt it was a foul on their goalkeeper, Josh Sheehan, who I know actually had to go to hospital, and we send our best wishes after the game. I know he has concussion, and I think there's no serious injury outside of that, so we wish him a speedy recovery from that. I know they were unhappy with that situation, but again, I suppose looking at it from a Pike point of view, firstly, you ground out another victory and you just keep yourself ticking over.
Yeah, it's another victory. They'd be delighted with that. Sometimes it's a manager's favourite scoreline, Adrian, the famous 1-0 win. And if you're grinding results out like that, maybe not playing at your best, it's the sign of a good team, and it's a sign of consistency. And if you want to win leagues, sometimes, look, you won't go through 22 games playing at your best for the whole 22 games. You have to grind out results. And when I was coaching and managing, especially at Jamesborough, I always felt that certainly from 7 or 8 teams down, you've got to be beating them. You have to. If you have aspirations of winning leagues, you've got to be beating those teams. And from 1 to 4, you cannot lose to them. That's how I always felt about things like that. In fairness to Pike, they're grifting the results. He had a lot of players. He didn't play himself, so far as I know. He didn't play on Hanrahan. Pat Mullins is obviously not available at the moment. A lot of players still to come into that squad. He has, obviously, as we've flagged already, a very big squad. So plenty of players getting game time. In the next few weeks, I've no doubt he'll be settling on an 11, what he'll consider close to his best 11. A lot of competition in that squad. But listen, Pike are going grand, and he'll just be delighted to get the 3 points and come out with it. I didn't see obviously didn't see the game, so the incident concerned. Kuna might have issues over that. In terms of what Kuna are doing, I've said before, there's no points for model victories. They'll be able to take loads of positives from the game.
Sounding like Roy Keane now.
Yeah, I know, but there's loads of positives they'll be able to take out of it, Adrian. Their first game of the season, I think the last 2 into Fairview.
Yeah.
Loads of positive takes out of that. But you come to the game, the few games you might be hoping to take points out of, and you're losing 4 and 5-1.
That was one thing I was going to say to you, actually, Aidan. You know, it's amazing, really, because as you said, people were saying, you know, would they be happy with the performance? They obviously were probably happy with the performances against both Fairview and Pike, who are the main title challengers. But then Paddy Hickey must also be looking at that in a more frustrating sense, because look what they've done against the teams around them. Yeah,
you're losing at home 5-1 to Crew Park. You're losing at home 5-0 to Regional. A lot of goals conceded. You know, I watched a couple of the games, and a lot of disorganisation. The backline weren't playing particularly well, conceding goals from set pieces. And yeah, you do see a result in like that against Pike, and you're saying, why such inconsistency with it? And it's obviously stuff they have to really look at and work on.
Yeah, certainly. I suppose we can't preview specifically many of the games now for Sunday. And you have the Munster Junior Cup beginning this weekend. It's going to be a long fixture list, as you can imagine. But you know, one aspect of it that I have been discussing with managers and players alike is the setup of maybe the Premier teams entering in the very first round and second rounds, as it were. For instance, you'll have Regional United A team playing Pike B, where there's obviously a vast gulf in the divisions. You know, like myself, I suppose yourself, you also think that that's the glamour of the cup. You know, you get a chance to play against the top teams in the city. I'm starting to feel like that maybe motivation isn't there as much as it was even 5 or 6 years ago. The discussion, you know, I'd like to have with you is, do you think there's merit in introducing the top 6 in particular in the Premier at a later stage? So, for instance, we'll have Crew Park and Ballinanty playing each other next week in the FAI. One of our major hopes gone out of the competition at an early stage, with all due respect to the other teams. And then you could have a team from the lower level, you know, pushing on further. So what's your own opinion on that?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and I can see where people are coming from in that, because there is a massive gap, and it's with the top 6 teams in the Premier League and every other team. But I'm an old romantic, Adrian. I love to see the open draw. There's a couple of reasons for that, I would feel, about that. The first reason is, obviously, if I was a player in a first division team meeting a Premier team in a cup, or even from a lower division, I would always have that feeling of a player, do you know what? We just might catch them this morning. We just might. And there is that chance there. And that's the romance of that. The other side of it is, yeah, you could meet him on a good day, and you could get absolutely hammered. And that's the joy of the cup. The other thing I would say to you is, if you look at the last few years and you look at teams like Regional B, for instance, who have done so well in the Munster Junior Cup, they have reached a quarter-final maybe once or twice in the last 4 or 5 years. They're down at 1B, or
they're down 1B this year, or 1A, sorry, this year, yeah.
You know, and imagine what that has done to the younger lads there, and how that has harnessed them and given them, you know, a great run in the competition. And I think that is the joy of it. That, yeah, you do get to look at the draw. You might get fixtures that you're capable of winning, even though you're a Premier A team or 1A or a 1B team, and you just might get out of the area and get a run in it. And that's the type of romance I'm talking about. And I think it's a great thing for that club and those players. And in time, some of those lads do make the jump to get noticed, and do make the jump to Premier clubs and play at a better standard of football. But I love the open draw, and I've always said when I've managed clubs that it doesn't matter who you play, what division they're in, what league they come from, or what part of the country they come from. You can be beaten on a given day in a cup match, and you can never take it for granted. So I would like to see it staying the way it is, obviously.
Yeah, after giving it a little thought, I was kind of undecided, but I always liked the challenge of playing a team higher. Although I do remember one of my own experiences of playing against yourself and Shane O'Hanlon's Janesborough team. and we were all really motivated, thinking we might catch you on the day. And I remember after 5 minutes, we were all going out screaming and motivating ourselves. And Shane Clark stuck the ball through my legs and lobbed our goalie from 30 yards, and that just sucked the life out of us for the rest of the game. So you can have those days, but I do still like the experience of playing against those teams. I suppose on a final note, Aidan, I it'd be remiss of me not to mention the fact that the Munster Champions Cup is on this week as well, where Everton, the Munster Senior League side, play Pike. If I'm not mistaken, Aidan, I think Pike may have beaten Everton in the FAI Senior Cup not that long ago. So, they'll be going into it with a bit of confidence and a great chance for them at home as well.
Yeah, and it's a trophy to win. It's a good trophy to win. I was privileged to win it with Janesborough. We beat St. Michael's in the final. Fantastic final in Jackman. Adrian, I don't know if you saw it or there. There was a massive crowd at the game. There was a great atmosphere. I think we were losing the match until the last maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and we eventually got home. But I think Pike will be targeting it. And listen, it only takes a few games to win it. So 3 or 4 games, you're into a final, and you can win it. And it's a lovely trophy. I think Pike will do well on Sunday. I think they'll win that match.
Yeah, and actually, Aidan, as well, I was hearing, which could be something that impacts Pike in the future, that Steve McGann picked up what is apparently a nasty enough knee injury last night, but I haven't got confirmation from anyone in the Pike camp as of yet as to that. So that would be obviously a season-changing injury if anything was to be long-term there.
Yeah, if that is true now, and I wasn't aware of that, but if that is true, that would be very damaging to Pike. In my opinion, he's the best midfielder in the country. I think he's a fantastic player. He's a real leader on the pitch. Pitches in with goals, box to box. Can play anywhere really for you. Powerful, physically well-built athlete. I think he's a brilliant player. He'd be a huge loss to Pike if it's a long-term injury. Hopefully, it isn't for Robbie Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully not. And thanks, Aidan, for cycling through all that information with us. It was great speaking to you again. A packed show for everyone. And obviously, we hope to have another packed show for everyone again next week to preview and review the action. I'm sure there'll be plenty more news, as there always is in junior football. So my thanks once again.